to see you, Dora.
Nice to see you too, Jen. So I have this thought. And I'm laughing as I say this because one of the steps in iRest or integrative restoration is around the layer of thought. And I think this is a really interesting one because this tends to be a layer that I like to live and get stuck in sometimes. And I think that for many of us, we also spend quite a lot of time in thought because we are so conditioned to live in our thinking minds that we become quite identified with our thoughts and beliefs. And it's really interesting that how much we stop ourselves from taking action or doing things in life because we believe that we are not able to do it or that we shouldn't do it or we can't do it. And I'm realizing that for myself in that looking back, that there were so many moments in my life where I truly believed that I couldn't do something, but not because I couldn't physically make anything or physically make something happen. It was because I was so stuck in my mind that I didn't believe that I could do it. And that when I was able to shift my perspective, just as simple as going from I don't believe I can do it to I believe I can do it, it just completely shifts my energy. And then now I start taking actions towards what I thought I could not do. And then I start doing all the impossible things, which were not impossible in the first place. And so it's just really interesting to see how powerful our minds really are. And that oftentimes what stops us is not all the other circumstantial things or people in our lives, which we like to you know, put blame on, if you like, quote unquote. But we like to think that, oh, there's no way I can do this because my situation is in this way, or there's no way I could achieve that because this person would never agree to it, or whatever it is. We kind of give our power away and we put it outside of us, thinking we cannot do it. But so many times it's really just turning that attention back to self and go, hey, look at this belief that you had. Is that really true? And and so this practice changed my life. It really changed my life. And so I'm just really excited to talk about this with you, Jen, today. And so I'm curious to see what your thoughts are around this.
It's interesting because what was arising as you were speaking just made me think of the thought of fear, and I know a lot of it has to do with in our human body. It's really just protecting us, and because we don't really have as many of the physical dangers that maybe you know previous ancestors long time ago. Just that physical survival was difficult enough. I feel like a lot of it has to do with sort of cognitive survival, maybe because we're such an intellectual society. So fear, even thinking about how a lot of times I thought I couldn't do something as well. Because I think my parents might have been fearful for us, like naturally, right? They have to look after us and make sure we survive, which is one of the biggest responsibilities they have. And because they were, oh, like my family is very much like, oh, you're too little, you can't do that. Because I was the younger of two and like pretty small as a kid. So sometimes I actually used it to my favor, okay, I guess I can't do that. You guys are going to have to paint my bedroom by yourself. You guys have to carry all the groceries in because I can't do it. I'm too small. So it's such an interesting thing where families might think they're protecting their children by using their own fears for things. Like I remember them not wanting me to even get on the bus sometimes, just to go down the street, just this fear for whatever reason, something might happen, right? Listening to the news, and there's so much fear in the news, right? But once you realize, okay, let me balance it's just down the street. We know that this street is safe. You can balance all the supposed cognitions that are appearing and then decide, like, it's actually okay. I can safely go down the street in a bus as a child, and I'll be safe. And I remember having, like, not with that kind of thinking, but I really had to fight um, over the fears that my parents had, and understandable, immigrant families coming in, there was a lot of fear. And I don't even know if my parents would recognize it now as, it being fear, really, right? It's really, for them, it's protecting their loved ones. But I feel grateful that we can recognize that it's just a perception, it's just a thought, neither bad nor good, right? Fear is also very healthy. There are sometimes people who are great risk takers and maybe go beyond, that fear might keep them in check sometimes. So it's an interesting thing when you don't look at it as bad or good. It's just like that messenger that we keep talking about. Fear can be a really helpful messenger, um, but it also can just point us in this, realizing that we are okay, and it's maybe someone else's cognition.
Yeah, like absolutely. And I think that it all comes back to curiosity as well. So if we're just curious about what's showing up, then what's showing up can be fear, it can be another emotion, it could be another thought, it could be a sensation. All of these things can be welcome. They can be welcome. So, like you say, fear. Even if just because when we say, "Oh, we're not afraid to feel into things or to have certain cognitions," it doesn't mean that the fear disappears. It just means that we are no longer resisting it. So even fear itself, we can welcome it. And yeah, I think that there in our society, and I totally resonate with what your upbringing. I also had a very similar upbringing in that love and care was shown through fear. Basically, it's their way of caring for you. Is when they worry about you and they stress about you. Um, that's their way of expressing their love and care, which which is interesting. But it can also instill a lot of fear in in the children that are being brought up in that way. And I also had to really not fight. I don't know if fighting is the right word, but I had to recognize that that was really what was hindering my growth, and that while it did keep me safe, it also kept me from experiences. It kept me from growing. It kept me from knowing who I am because there was just so much fear. And so there has to be a balance, right? You can be safe in a house and never go outside and never, never get hurt because you never meet anyone and you never have any contact with, illnesses outside. Like, yeah, you can be very protective in your little bubble, but can you experience life in that way? Do you have joy in your life in that way? So it's definitely a balance. And that what you said is also really true about nothing is really right or wrong or good or bad. Like we have these conditioning, and I like to think of it as, well, this is my work. This is what I'm here to do, is to understand myself. And this is sort of my puzzle that I need to I get to tinker with and play with in this lifetime. And we all have different puzzles that we're kind of working on. And so now I'm trying to piece all these little pieces together. So I'm getting all different information from all the beliefs and cognitions and emotions and sensations that I'm having, which are all coming up as messengers telling me, pieces of information about myself that I can choose to start to put together and integrate in a healthy way, and be able to have a relationship with myself in a healthy way.
It's a beautiful way of saying it, and it makes me um, remember the koshas when I first learned about these different layers that they say are sheaths, these Maya, and knowing that cognition is one of them. I remember it was a relief when I discovered, oh, there's so many layers. There's so many layers. So when something's happening, sometimes to just identify with it, recognizing like, oh, it's just a physical feeling. Like I'm okay. I'm not actually feeling anxious, whatever. I'm actually just sick. I'm physically sick. Or recognizing that a thought has popped in. So it's just a thought. It's not all of me. Everything else is well, but there's just one thought for some reason is appearing, and maybe I'm feeling an aversion to it. So being able to recognize that it might fit into one of these koshas as these little pieces of information coming through. It's a wonderful way to see it.
Yeah. And, because we are so identified with our minds, we believe that we are our thoughts and we get really attached to our identities. And on one hand, maybe, I mean, I think we've been told that we really need to have a sense of self, like who are you, right? What do you do? What do you live for? And I think that, in this way, we've been told, or we've learned to hold on to things about ourselves that aren't really our true selves. And we might be holding on to dreams that others want for us as well. And so, when we don't stop to question, well, why am I holding on to this thought? Why do I feel so why it's so important for me to take on this identity, then we never really get to the bottom of our dissatisfaction. And I say this because many of us are dissatisfied with life. Many of us are not happy with where we're at. And some of us are struggling and suffering and experiencing pain physically and psychologically. And we don't know why. Um, and so the practice of integrative restoration, or iRest, is really helpful in helping us to understand, well, where are our pain and suffering coming from? And how much of it is really something that we can do something about? So much of our pain and suffering, we think that it's something that's external to us, and we think that this is just my situation. This is just how things are going to be. I'm really unhappy and I don't know what to do. I think that when we give people the understanding that there's a lot you can do for yourself to change your experience, it's really empowering, because now we're no longer giving our power away and thinking that, oh, I'm at the mercy of this person or at the mercy of this situation. There's actually, like, maybe I can never change my situation, my external situation. Maybe I can never change my living environment and so forth. I can't change my family. Like, there are a lot of things that we can't change. So if we're waiting for things to shift outside of us for us to feel okay inside, then we're in trouble, right? And so now, if we can give people or offer people a practice where actually nothing else needs to change, but your experience can. And in fact, that's all that matters, is your experience.
You make
So,
me
yeah.
you make me think of as well, and sort of relates to that, is languaging. One of the another relief. As we were studying, I know you and I were really going back and forth, but all the different texts we were studying for our iRest integrated restoration certification. And just like how words can just fall away. And I know Richard, the founder of iRest, will often say, and Stephanie as well, one of the senior teachers, they're just words, really, words to describe the undescribable. And that for me was so meaningful, because you can label yourself anything, right? And then really it's just naming. We're already connected. We're already connected. And humans, I feel, and I think it's also research, just this need to be part of a group. So maybe calling yourself, friend or family member, or a mother or child, or iRest teacher, any of the groups make us feel connected, but we're already connected. We don't need to have those names. And maybe if for some reason, if that person needs that name, sure, that's, if that's what you need, but we already are connected. We don't need to be labeled anything. We don't need to be labeled friend or daughter or group member. because we already are part of this larger, unchangeable group. So it's interesting, like knowing that languaging falls short of what really is all around us and inside of us. It changes everything. I think it makes everything feel just more loving and lighter, when you can let the words fall away.
Yeah. Yeah. And so I think that a lot of us who like to live in our heads, it's really difficult when we say, oh, let those thoughts go or let them fall away. But it is a practice. This is what, why we need to practice. It's not something that might come right away to some people. And some people, yeah, they get it right away. But for a lot of us who like to hold on to our beliefs and thoughts and identity, then this practice can be a wonderful way for us to start learning that there's another way to be. Like we don't necessarily have to live in a way that brings us the stress and anxiety, right? That we can alter our experience of how we relate to ourselves and to each other, and that as we start to learn that we can actually feel into our bodies, we can actually notice our breath. So it gives us other ways to focus our attention than just all the thoughts that are in our mind. Um, we're starting to give ourselves sort of different ways of relating to ourselves. So it's not just about living in my thoughts. I can actually learn to feel into my body, and that it's a different experience, right? When there's confusion in the mind, it doesn't mean that there has to be confusion in the body. In fact, the body always knows. And so when we start to make that connection, or start to cultivate a practice that we can drop the energy from the head back into the heart or back into the body, that we're giving ourselves a different way um, to be with ourselves, which can be very new for some people, right? But that can offer them a safe space also, and it could be, just that, the inner resource, right, where sometimes we can't figure out, there's a lot of confusion and there's a lot of busyness in our mind, and we can't let go of the thoughts. Maybe you don't need to, like, if it's too difficult for now, if you're so attached to your beliefs, then it's okay. It's okay, but maybe we can learn to just come back to the body and then see if anything shifts, and notice that as we kind of find a way to ground ourselves, and then we look at those thoughts and those beliefs again, and then just be curious. I wonder if I can look at this in a different way. And just that curiosity, again, as long as we're curious, we already start to um, let go a little bit. Like we're not grasping as tightly as we're able to ask the question, can I just see it? Right? Can I just see it? Is there a different way I can see it? Maybe yes, maybe no. We're not even asking for anything different, right? We're just saying, I wonder what would happen. And I think that this curiosity is it's a very gentle way to open us up to inquiry, because it's not asking you to have any experience. It's just really just curious. I wonder what would happen, and anything is okay. Like there's no expected outcome. And yet, as gentle as it is in that way, it's also one of the most powerful things that we can do for ourselves.
It's very natural. You make me sort of remember how, like, one thing that a lot of other animals, including us, have in common is this playfulness. So if we can be playful through our curiosity and inquiry, not looking at as something that has to be figured out per se, right? But just through this playfulness, it's amazing how everything can be revealed very naturally. So rather than looking at it as thinking too much or having to think too deeply, but just continuing to nurture this playfulness and curiosity of the world. Just like when you think of any animals, it feels like they look at life with curiosity. When you look at different woodland animals, or canines, anything they come across, it feels like for the rest of their life, like something that we can learn from them is finding this delight and playfulness in life, all the way through to, as long as we get. But it's an interesting thing. Having said that, because we are such cognitive animals, it's a great way to sort of bring iRest to people. Because I feel like, now that we can present the research and present our own experiences, going through cognitions and intellect and giving them research, people feel more comfortable. And then it gives them the opportunity, then, okay, now that I know that, I've met my cognitions and my thoughts, maybe now I can make space to actually feel the experience. So it's an interesting thing, us being animals of intellect and cognitions. We can maybe bring this playfulness and then maybe use and harness our intellect to be able to embody everything.
Yeah, I love that. And hopefully our listeners, our viewers will maybe take this sense of curiosity with them and just ask questions as you experience your day and just notice what comes up for you.
That sounds like a great suggestion. So maybe encouraging people to just be with the curiosities that arise rather than sort of attaching to any thoughts, just like recognizing them as messengers, perhaps, just like bodily sensations, just like emotions. Maybe they can recognize these thoughts and with curiosity and playfulness as messengers. Any other suggestions?
Yeah, I think that, for those of us that are really heady, which I relate to, it's not easy to just say, oh, just do this because our minds are so strongly attached. Um, I think that the gentlest way really is to be curious. I think that for a lot of us, we may hold a lot of judgment without even knowing that we hold a lot of judgment to ourselves, judgment to our situations and the people that we interact with, not necessarily in a way that's unkind, but we tend to judge. And I think that as we start to let these concepts fall away and say, what if there's nothing that's really right or wrong, good or bad? What if these are all my own conditioned beliefs? So I think that what's been most helpful for me is not to say, oh, stop thinking this or stop identifying with that or whatever, because you can't. Because when you are, you just are. And from the perspective of iRest, not even that is right or wrong to become attached, but so just can we at least recognize when it is happening? Can we recognize them as messengers saying that, oh, isn't that interesting? I am so attached to this. And I think just in the recognition already starts to shift your experience. And the more we start to recognize what's arising for us, the more we're able to loosen our grip each time.
So let us
What do
know.
you think?
I think that's great. I think they can let us know, if whatever's arising after even this session. Let us know how they're being able to meet with curiosity, whatever's arising, and maybe give it a little bit of space, so without judging, like you said, which is difficult. And even that, I remember that was a practice in itself. Trying not to judge and then noticing yourself judging, but being able to be okay with noticing yourself judging, right? And then just over and over and over. And I feel like there can be more room and more space for it all to unfold and be all okay. Thank you so much, everybody. Let us know. Bye.
Thank you.